Welcome back, Honors. All right, so we are going to pick up right where we left off in class, talking about the Roman era post-death of Julius Caesar. Getting straight into it right now. We're going to try to keep this flip as short and as sweet as possible, even though, ironically enough, the story is very dense. All right, so if you need to take times to pause this and jot things down and listen to the story and stuff, remember, not everything is written on the screen because it's such an intense story that if I did that, it would take us, like, I could teach a course like this in, like, a day, or like not a day, but like in a year, right? So big thing though, we are now slowly moving into the empire period of Rome, right? And when I say slow, I actually mean super fast. All right, now look, big thing about it though is we know that Roman time is broken up into three periods, right? We got the kingdom, the republic, the empire, right? The republic pretty much dies with Caesar, right? In 44 BC, when he dies, the republic period pretty much ends. Right now, what I mean by that is it is like the death rattle for the Republic. It's like, you're donezo, all right? Actually, a death rattle is the gurgly noise you make when you die. You're just like, now, but big thing, though, is that the Empire period will begin in 29 BC, right? Technically, some historians argue 27. We're just going to gun it with 29, though, okay? And it all has to surround the allegiance or the rise of this guy, right? That right there is Octavian, right? So Octavian, what would later be Caesar, right? But you can just write Octavian right now, right? Octavian, right? And as you can tell, this man is going to rise up and become one of the most dominant figures that Roman history has ever seen, right? So Octavian is a very, very important person. I'm going to cover this up because I don't want you to copy that yet. But Octavian is a very important person because following the death of Julius Caesar, his will is uncovered, right? And in his will, he apparently decided to adopt Octavian, his grandnephew, as his son, right? So some of you are like, oh, Megan LaCour, right? Megan LaCour is like, oh, wait a minute. Cleopatra wanted Caesarion to be... Oh, remember, Caesar never had any children, right? So he believed that he would need someone to pass on his legacy, his gratitude, his power, his everything onto, and the person that he chose to do that with was his grandnephew, the son of his niece, right, Octavian, right? And so he adopts him as his son, right? And so Octavian is going to inherit all of the things of Caesar, right? He's going to inherit his greatness, his legacy, his name, his everything, but also his debt, right? Which is another big, like, little stickler in there a little bit, right? But, so once Octavian is adopted by Caesar, he wasn't actually even in Rome at the time. So when he was actually adopted by Caesar, he was in Greece, right? Why was he in Greece? He was studying, right? So Octavian is a genius, right? I believe certifiable genius, right? So Octavian, while he was in Greece, he was studying astrology and astronomy, right? He was studying the movement of the stars, movement of celestial bodies, and he was becoming as smart as he possibly could. When he hears the death of his uncle, right, he comes back to Rome and finds out that he has been adopted as his son, right? But also when he returns to Rome, there is a civil war raging, right? Because following the death of Julius, Octavian returns to Rome, and a civil war is raging between pro-Julius Caesar armies and the anti-Julius Caesar Senate and their armies, right? And so this war is very violent, it's very chaotic, but a big important thing to understand is that when Octavian returns to Rome, a lot of y'all are probably thinking to yourself, like, wait, wouldn't they arrest Octavian if he has just been adopted as Caesar's son, right? Wouldn't they actually do that? Well, no, ironically enough, right? The Senate actually believed that Octavian would help them win the war, right? Because of their distant relationship. Octavian and Caesar were never super, super tight when he was growing up, but he knew that Octavian was going to be a great mind. He also knew that if he did not adopt Octavian, that there is a chance that Cleopatra could come back and say, oh, well, this is the son of Caesar, and try to use that clout and that inherent ability of being the child of Caesar to then grow up and become ruler of Rome, right? Now, the big thing about it, though, is the Senate believed, like, no, let's use this to our advantage. Let's use this new adopted son, right? That they're not even that tight. He's probably upset that he's inheriting all this debt. And let's use that distant relationship of theirs. And also, we kind of think Octavian's a pushover, right? He's kind of like a pretty boy, right? Like, he's like this really, go back. They think he's like, oh, look at him. Like, he's like a good-looking dude, right? Like, he's a pretty boy. He's really smart. He's kind of a nerd, right? Like, maybe we'll be able to, like, just tell him whatever we want him to do, right? So they give Octavian a legion, right? They give him a legion, and they tell him to march on the man who's leading the pro-Julius Caesar army. And who is that guy? Mark Antony, right? Mark Antony was the second in command of Caesar. Mark Antony was the man who crossed the Rubicon with Caesar at his side, right? Mark Antony was the pleb that started from the bottom and worked his way all the top to the way to the top to being one of the best generals in Rome, right? So Octavian, given an army by the Senate, goes off to march against Mark Antony, right? And they actually get into a small battle. Now, after the battle is over, Octavian sends word to Mark Antony that he wants to have a meeting with him, right? And Octavian, see, this is what the Senate didn't bet on. Octavian's a genius, right? Octavian's a genius, and Octavian's like, no, why would I fight against you when we could combine our forces and march on Rome together, right? So, and that's what he does. Octavian meets with him and then allies with Mark Antony, right? Octavian and Mark Antony then march on Rome and they take it over, right? So, and they take it over by declaring many of the Senate families to be outlaws to the Roman state, right? They march on Rome with a massive military, destroy the Senate armies in the process, and when they arrive in Rome, they have a document with them, a hit list, you could call it, right? And they post that thing in the forum, and they're like, dear Rome, all right? Dear every citizen of Rome, dear to the plebs, to the patricians, to the everyone, if you know a family on this list, and there were 300 of them, right? 300 Senate families, right? If you know a family on this list, you bring them bring us the head of their family, all right? Bring us the leader of their family, dead or alive, and we will give you 10% of the wealth that that family owns, right? And so all these Romans are like, ooh, I'll do that in a minute, right? And so they go off and they literally start killing these senator families, the ones that conspired to kill Julius, right? This is a genius idea, and it's also a fantastic fundraiser, because remember, Octavian inherited the debt of Julius, right? This is a big problem for him. He needs to figure out a way to make as much money as possible, right? And so what he does is he uses this hit list to try and basically conspire to kill the remainder of Rome, right? So Octavian uses this whole thing, marches on Rome, and then, wait a second, they only got 10%. Where does the other 90 go? The other 90 goes to Octavian and his buddies. All right, so like now speaking of his buddies, right? Once he issues this hit list on the senator families of Rome, once he starts collecting 90% of their wealth, right? Once he clears the Julius Caesar debt, Octavian, Caesar's grandnephew, now son, forms this thing known as the Second Triumvirate. Julia, Ashley Reach, did a phenomenal project poster on this. I can't wait to hang it up. He forms the Second Triumvirate to bring peace to Rome and to also turn the armies of the pro-Julius Caesar movement, the Second Triumvirate army, against the men who murdered Caesar. Wait a second. We never talked about that. We never talked about what happened to Brutus and Cassius, right? Brutus and Cassius are the two guys that conspired to kill Caesar, and in the Ides of March, they had him stabbed to death, right? Where are they? What happened to them after that moment? Well, here's what had ended up occurring. Brutus and Cassius ran away, right? Brutus and Cassius thought that Rome would be happy that Caesar was dead. They were wrong. So out of safety, they ran away all the way out to Greece, right? They ran all the way out to Greece, and they were in hiding out in Greece, right? In an area known as Philippi, right? So they're hiding out in Greece, and they're really scared, and they're freaking out, and they're like, oh, crap, oh, crap, oh, crap, oh, crap. So biggest thing, though, is they also are really scared because this new thing called the Second Triumvirate is on the way to get them, right? So it had more power than the Senate, and it acted as a three-way dictatorship. That's right. It's an official dictatorial alliance, right? It is different from the First Triumvirate. The First Triumvirate was an informal political alliance that was formed to try and create Caesar as a consul, right? To bribe his way in, to work through Pompey to create a powerful Caesar, right? This one was a three-way dictatorship, right? And it was Octavian, Mark Antony, the guy that he just marched into Rome with, and Marcus Lepidus. All right, so like, wah, wah. Marcus Lepidus is lame. Nobody even likes Marcus Lepidus, right? Marcus Lepidus is just some dude with some boats. All right, so Marcus Lepidus is a guy that Mark Antony knew, and like Octavian was like, well, we can't have just me and you. We got to have somebody out there, right? We need a triumvirate, right? Much like my dad, right? So, and Mark Antony's like, well, what about I know this one guy named Marcus Lepidus, right? Marcus Lepidus, he's got boats, he's got a small navy, he's got like a couple of legions, right? We can bring him in, and also he's pretty weak-willed, right? So like Octavian's like, sounds like a great idea. Let's go get that pansy. So they literally then bring in this guy named Marcus Lepidus, who even has a lame-sounding name, right? So now the big thing though is Octavian and his new buddies then go after Brutus and Cassius, and they defeat them in Greece, right? At the Battle of Philippi, they defeat the armies of Brutus and Cassius, right? Well, ironically enough, Mark Antony beats the armies of Brutus and Cassius, because ironically enough, Brutus showed up with his army and actually beat the armies of Octavian, and then went into the tent to find Octavian to hopefully kill him, and then Octavian just wasn't there. So some historians are like, did Octavian run away? Is he a little nervous? Is he a little scaredy cat? So apparently, like, Octavian ran away, and then Mark Antony showed up with his armies and then destroyed the armies of Brutus. Cassius and Brutus both killed themselves before Mark Antony could get to them and kill him himself, right? Because Mark Antony, out of the three of these people, wants to kill Brutus and Cassius the most. He is the second in command, right? He is the son that he believes that Caesar thought he was, even though he, ironically enough, adopted Octavian, right? I wish he would have adopted Mark Antony instead sometimes. Because Octavian is a very intense ruler. Very morally disputed, right? Literally, you could argue that he was great or he was awful. He was amazing or he was villainous. He was super nice or one of the most evil people in existence. He literally had 300 families killed just to collect their money, right? So he actually at one point also had a bunch of people sacrificed. Like, Rome doesn't sacrifice people. Rome sacrifices things, plants, foods. They sacrifice stuff like that. But they don't sacrifice people. That's not like a Roman thing, but I guess Octavian sacrifices people, right? So now the big thing, though, going into it, though, is they go out there and they get Brutus. Oh, fun fact, too, Cassius stabs himself with the knife that he actually stabbed Caesar with. Fun fact. Now, also, though, once this occurs, they then decide to split the power up, right? And once this occurs, and once Brutus and Cassius is dead, Octavian thinks things a step further, and at a massive set of games, right, in the Circus Maximus, he has his dad, Julius Caesar, proclaimed a god, right, after that victory. Because remember, Octavian's a genius. He had studied astrology for years, so he knew one night that a comet was going to pass over top of Rome and everyone would be able to see it. So he held games that night and then told everyone in the stadium, look up and you will see my father ascend into the heavens and become a god himself. And so a comet struck over and then everybody was like, oh, there goes Caesar. There goes Julius. He's going to become a god. And then he's like, and Octavian's like, because now that makes him half god, right? So like, very, very genius move by Octavian. Octavian is no dummy, right? So, but following the death of Brutus and Cassius, right, following the proclamation of Caesar as a new god of Rome, right, the second triumvirate is going to split the empire into 3 parts, and they're going to each be assigned a part to rule. Octavian, of course, ends up giving himself the city of Rome and the areas north of Italy. Mark Antony, jot this down, gets Greece, right? He ends up getting Greece and the areas over towards North Africa, which is right next door to Egypt. Some of you are like, Cleopatra's coming back, and she is. All right, so now look, Mark Antony gets that side, right, over towards Greece and towards Egypt, and then Marcus Lepidus gets this, like, little sliver of land in North Africa that nobody wants, and it's got Carthage in it. Like, Carthage doesn't even grow plants anymore, apparently. It's just destroyed. So they're like, Marcus Lepidus. All right, so it's really not even, it's like a biumvirate. It's less of a triumvirate, right? So, but I'm going to finish this up again. Bell rang. I got kids coming in, okay? So I'll talk to y'all a little bit after school as well. I'll be right back. Oh, all right. Welcome to the house. Hey, baby. All right, so anyway, let's pick up where we left off, right? We just jumped over to my house real quick. It is not time for you to EAT yet. You need to calm down. Now, we left off talking about, like, Marcus Lepidus and how he's not a really good figure in this triumvirate. It's more like a biumvirate, right? So, big thing about the second triumvirate, though, it is going to end up falling apart after they begin to split the territory of the empire. A lot of other things happen with this triumvirate. I can tell you stories all day long. Talk about how Mark Antony had a guy named by the name of Cicero hunted down and killed, and they took his head and hung it in the forum along with his hands because Mark Antony's at the time wife was like, oh, that is the strongest tools of Cicero, his head and his hands, because he was a writer and an orator and all this other stuff, and people would walk by and hit it like a piñata. There's like, I could teach a whole course about the second triumvirate, but the problem is we do need to keep moving, right? So big thing about it, though, is some things are going to start getting real fishy. All right, so some people in the second triumvirate are going to start getting real anxious as time goes on because they believe that there may be a chance that they might get betrayed, right? So, and the suspicion is actually coming from Octavian going towards Mark Antony, right? So as we know, Octavian controls the land in the Italy, France, Spain, the western territory of Rome, right? Mark Antony controls the area with Greece, which is right next door to Egypt. Marcus Lepidus controls that area in North Africa, right? Now, ironically enough, Mark Antony turns out, following the death of his then wife, because she has a revolt against Octavian, and then Octavian has her killed along with several other people and sacrificed inside of the Circus Maximus. But what ends up happening is Mark Antony ends up running off and meeting up with Cleopatra, right? Colleen, right? Colleen knows all about this. We talked about this already. Colleen was like, wait, Mark Antony? Cleopatra? I was like, yeah, this is when that happens, Colleen. So when Mark Antony receives Greece and the eastern territory of the empire, following the death of Brutus and Cassius and at the Battle of Philippi, and when they divide the empire up, what ends up occurring is Mark Antony starts to align himself with Cleopatra. They start seeing one another, dating one another, and they end up marrying each other in the long run. Cleopatra has 3 children for Mark Antony. She bets on Mark Antony being the guy that will beat Octavian and then make himself leader of Rome. And Cleopatra is hoping that Mark Antony will win this war against Octavian and end up becoming the queen of Rome herself, right? Very, very strategic lady. I know Aaron right now is just like, oh my God, Cleopatra's awesome. Now, unfortunately, she bet on the wrong horse, right? A lot of this is really unfortunate because Marcus Lepidus ends up getting his land and his army stripped from him by Octavian. He ends up then going off and fighting Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and he ends up winning a war against them, right? But so eventually Octavian beats Mark Antony and Cleopatra and claims Egypt as his own, right? So now in the whole process, Cleopatra and Mark Antony are going to die, right? So Octavian beats them at a very large battle. I believe it's Thessaly. I'll look it up later. All right, so and I'll throw it in here. But Octavian ends up beating Mark Antony and Cleopatra, and in the process, Mark Antony actually kills himself, right? Because he believes that he's going to end up being captured by Octavian and he's going to end up dying. But what ends up happening as well is Cleopatra hears that Mark Antony has killed himself, so she decides to kill herself by grabbing a snake out of a basket and pressing it against her chest and forcing an Egyptian asp to bite her, and it ends up killing her as well. So now that Mark Antony has stripped the land from Marcus Lepidus, let's rewind that. Now that Octavian has stripped the land from Marcus Lepidus and also beaten Mark Antony and Cleopatra in a very, very large war, he is now... What? Oh, you're just walking around. Sorry. Hello. So anyway, now that Octavian has stripped the land away from Marcus Lepidus, as well as from beating Mark Antony and Cleopatra in a very large war, Octavian is now in complete control of Egypt and the entirety of Rome surrounding the Mediterranean Sea. What is now occurring? Octavian now becomes the dictator of Rome in 27 BC, and he restores the Republic, quote unquote, right? So when he becomes dictator in 27 BC / 29 BC, when he actually defeats Mark Antony and Cleopatra in a very large-scale war, the big thing about it is he claimed he was giving the authority of the Roman Republic back to the people, right? Now, the thing about it is, he really didn't do it, okay? He changes his name in the process of this to Augustus, right? So Octavian will no longer be called Octavian Caesar. He is now Augustus Caesar, and he becomes the first true emperor of Rome, okay? Jot that down. The true emperor of Rome, okay? Now, big things that are going on right now. The Republic period is now over, right? So as of 27 BC, the Republic period is now ended. Some of you are like, but you said he restored it. It wasn't really the true Roman Republic. That was never actually restored. What Augustus did, now Augustus, restored was this new system he actually created called the Principate system, right? Where literally he was basically an all-time consul, right? The Principate system declared that Octavian / Augustus the first citizen of Rome. You see what he's doing here? You see how he's pretending that the Republic is still there, even though it's not, right? So he becomes the first true emperor of Rome. And the imperator is where that word comes from. So since Octavian destroyed the armies of Mark Antony and Cleopatra, forcing them to kill themselves and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, what ends up occurring is he earns the title of imperator. Now, an imperator is a general that has won a massive victory in Rome, right? And due to this entire thing, he is now declared an imperator, right? And because he's now created his principate imperator system, they instead, over time, the word becomes emperor, right? It changes from imperator to emperor, right? So Augustus becomes the first true emperor of Rome in this process, right? Augustus was also an absolute genius, right? We talked about this earlier. Two out of every three of the senators was loyal to him, right? So 66% of the Senate refused to do anything negative towards Augustus, and they refused to do anything that they thought might anger him, right? And why is this? Because that 66% is the only percent of the Senate that's left. What did he do with Mark Antony to the other 30% of the Senate when he came back to Rome originally? He had them all killed, right? He had a hit list out for them. He actually has their families destroyed and has their wealth stripped from them, right? So Augustus, this whole time, has been moving his way towards becoming the first emperor of Rome, right? Now, crazy thing about it is Augustus, jot this down, ask this question in your notes, is Augustus a morally disputed figure? Yes, he is, right? Because he was willing to shed blood of his enemies to get to the power level he wanted. But at the same time, he introduced a period of success and prosperity to the Roman Empire known as the Pax Romana. You need to highlight that right there, the Pax Romana. That literally means in Latin, Roman peace, right? And the period of Roman peace will last for 200 years, right? 200 years. It's a golden age of Rome introduced by Augustus himself, right? When he becomes the first true emperor of Rome, he destroys the Republic completely, following the reforms of his quote-unquote father, Gaius Julius Caesar, right? Even though, ironically enough, it was his great-uncle, right? And he becomes the first true emperor of Rome and ushers in this thing known as the Pax Romana. And in the process of the Pax Romana, he creates the most ridiculous set of reforms and the most wildly intense set of reforms that the world has ever seen, right? Because since he is the very first true emperor of Rome, he introduces all kinds of sweeping reforms. Things are going to be accomplished. Like, for example, he is going to create basically the very first constitutional monarchy using his principate system. As we know, there was no written constitution for Rome. This constitutional monarchy, quote unquote, is actually outlined in his principate system, right? So this is when a king must work with other governing bodies, okay? So was the Senate still there when he was an emperor? Yes, right? And is the Senate going to forever be a part of Roman politics? Yes, the Senate didn't go anywhere. Were the consuls still elected every single year? Yes. Were there still citizen assemblies? Yes. Were there still tribunes? Yes. All that stuff still existed, but the emperor held the biggest amount of power in this entire system, right? Now, this is going to be the first version of what you would call a constitutional monarchy, right? So, the other big thing is laws are going to be passed giving citizens more rights. He's going to expand citizenship to more people throughout the entire empire. So, this is going to bring in more taxing, more money, and more monetary wealth to the Roman Empire. Romans are also going to be the very first people to take a modern version of a census. Now, the Romans have been taking forms of a census for over almost 1,000 years, right? And they actually were brought in with these Roman figures known as censors, right? But what Augustus did to this census is he modernized it. He made it better, he made it more effective, and he made it so it was large enough and big enough to take account of every single person in the empire, right? That's what a census is. A census is a count and not only a head count, but an overview of the things that those people also own so you can create an effective taxation system, right? He is going to expand roads. The roads system will be expanded and the infrastructure of Rome becomes much better. Another larger big thing about this is the aqueduct system is going to be expanded. New government buildings would be created. And also he's going to create the very first professional army of Rome, right? Now no longer is Megan LaCour going to have to buy her equipment to be able to be in the army. He creates a professional army when the government provides the equipment for the citizen, right? And they also receive a pay while they're actually in the standing army. He actually equalizes those forces, right? That's a big deal. So yes, did he have 300 senatorial families killed and also have people executed in the Circus Maximus as sacrifices? Yes. Is he a morally disputed figure? Yes. Did he strip land from Marcus Lepidus? Yes. Did he end up leading a massive army against Mark Antony and Cleopatra, leading to them killing themselves? Yes, but he also did all of these things, right? He expanded the aqueduct system, bringing better fresh water from further distances away to Rome, right? And he also even creates this thing known as the Praetorian Guard, right? The Praetorian Guard became like the secret service for the Russian, or not the Russian, excuse me, for the Roman emperor, right? The Praetorian Guard. He also did things like this, right? Jot this down. Created public bathhouses, right? This right here, that's a toilet, all right? So that right there is actually a public commode. It is a public bathroom. And this would actually fall down into a sewage system that ran beneath Rome, sending more waste out, keeping the population cleaner, and preventing disease and preventing that from being spread, right? This right here is one of the most famous Roman baths that was also built during the Pax Romana, right? This Roman bath right here was actually, the water was filled with salt, right? So it actually was more like self-cleaning in a sense, right? So this salt water, because we have saltwater pools throughout New Orleans. A lot of people are turning to saltwater pools to actually be a way of keeping their water clean without using heavy chemicals, right? So salt water was used to keep the water clean. Also, this water was kept at about 100 degrees at all times because slaves built fires underneath the floor of the pool itself to keep the water heated, right? So also preventing the spread of bacteria and the spread of disease. This was the men's bathhouse, and this is the women's bathhouse that actually existed right next door, right? So that right there is the aqueduct system that he expanded as well, bringing more fresh water and cleanlier systems into Rome. All of these things are amazing. This right here is the Forum of Augustus, right? He has other forums built and expanded upon. And apparently this is also the place where you would drop off your loot whenever you actually went off and Roman militaries had success taking over other places. They would dump the treasure that they had found in the Forum of Augustus. And apparently the Forum of Augustus was so big and so full of riches during the Pax Romana that it was almost impossible to walk through because it was covered in different items that they had taken. That right there is the Pantheon, right? The Pantheon is like the Roman version of the Parthenon. It was a temple to Jupiter, right? It is made out of poured concrete. Marcus Agrippa, one of his second in command, biggest supporters, Marcus Agrippa, designed this entire building made out of poured concrete, which means it had to be poured all at the same time. It is still to this day an architectural marvel. The Pantheon, spelled Pantheon, right? This right here is the inside of the Pantheon with a completely functional dome, a coffered ceiling, as well as a skylight to provide natural light to this temple of Jupiter, right? Absolutely insane. I've seen the Pantheon. It's absolutely wild. Art and construction is going to leap forward. My Latin kids, you've heard of this. Virgil's poem, the Aeneid, will be written during the Pax Romana, and what we will pick up talking about in class is the Colosseum, which will also be built during the Pax Romana. So I'll see you guys then. Y'all have a good one. Hope you enjoyed this. Have a great weekend.